When I think about intuition, I think about this bright, powerful light that is just in front of us, and it just draws us in, and it gives us direction no matter where we are. It's not the only thing that exists. We still have our wings that we need to fly, and we use our senses to move past objects and to avoid danger. And these senses are like our logical and analytical thinking. And these wings are like our actions that we take to move closer to this powerful light. So everything works together so we can have a pleasant journey. But there's just one little problem. Many of us have turned their backs from this source of light. And now they just buzz around, watching out for all these obstacles that they encounter, only so they can try to avoid the next obstacle. So they fly about and have no sense of direction. They don't know what they're doing. They don't remember anymore the light that is supposed to guide them. I was writing this text with my co-writer, Intuition. I wanted to grasp the essence of intuition without using logical explanations right in the beginning. And intuition is such an essential part of life, and it's so valuable and important, and I'm afraid that many people sleep on it. Some people rely too much on logical thinking, and some people don't trust their intuition. And in this video, I want to show you what I think intuition is and how you can discover it and how you can become more intuitive. Because with intuition, you'll have deeper connections with other humans. You will be more creative and you will have access to life-changing insights. Throughout my whole life, big decisions have been guided by my intuition. When I left school, I went to France. I just had this pull towards living in France, and I wanted to do a social job there. So I went to a children's home to stay there. I just knew I wanted to do that. I just knew I wanted to be close Paris in a little village, and so I did. And I learned so many things about how I want to live, how I want to work. And during that time, I became friends with people who were studying somewhere in Germany, and they told me about their place, and I immediately fell in love with it. I still haven't made the decision to study, so that was the perfect timing for me to get inspired. And this place sounded so magical, so perfect. It was close to the mountains. It had its own lake and rivers, and it has a beautiful view, beautiful, amazing weather, and close to other countries like Switzerland, Italy, France. So I just knew I needed to go there for studying. I didn't even care what I would study. And I just applied to get there, and I would end up studying there for 5 years, and it was one of the best times of my life. I made friends for life. I learned things for life. I told you in the video before, I made music on the streets and played a lot, and that happened in the city. And it was so small, and it was for me able to do all these things because it was so small and not so overwhelming and so you have it. And many years later, after I finished studying, I was already working. I went to India for a yoga training, and I just knew that I needed to do this in India at a specific place. So I went there, and it was the beginning of COVID, actually. It was 2020, and I didn't know that the planet would go completely crazy at the time, but I just knew I needed to go there. And when COVID hit, I was in the middle of my training, and I intuitively decided to stay. And again, it was one of the most important, wonderful times I had. I made beautiful friends. I had amazing experiences. I learned so much about myself and about yoga. And this wouldn't have happened if I would have just trusted what other people tell me to do. And that what I remember that my parents would tell me to come back home. And family members and friends, they were all panicking back home. But I was so sure that nothing will happen to me. I just knew I'm in the right place at the right time. And it would usually always work out. I always was where I needed to be when I made life decisions. like this. I always ended up in the right place. And I want to show you how I am doing this. And I want to help you to foster this intuition and discover your intuition and to trust it more. If that's your issue, I will try to cover as much as I can in this video, so you get the most out of it. I pour my whole heart into this video, so I really hope this will help you. So let's get right into it. Let's discuss for a moment what happens if you don't develop intuition. If you're not listening to your intuition at all, then you will often find yourself stuck in analysis paralysis. I'm so glad I could pronounce this word now. I have so much difficulty with this word. Basically, you will lose a lot of time and nerves and energy just thinking and overthinking. And it's so easy to get lost. And even if you do all these things, thinking so much, you will not always make the right decisions. You will sometimes try to gather all the data, but you don't even know what's the right thing to do. So you get lost, you lose track, and you might not even be happy with all with your decisions because you have been thinking about them way too much. And without intuition, you will have difficulties explaining and understanding complex scenarios, and you will not be able to make the best out of life. So yeah, intuition is pretty powerful and important. I think it's pretty helpful to contrast intuition with logic. Even though they work together, I want to look at it separately so we get a better understanding for these, let's call them thinking styles, that are important in our day-to-day life. Just in a nutshell, logical thinking for me, it's linear and more deliberate. Linear thinking wants to break problems into components and analyze all of these components separately. And without intuition, you will have difficulties explaining and understanding complex scenarios. So it costs more energy, and the tools logic uses are reasoning, evidence, and facts. And of course, logical thinking in its purest form doesn't exist. This might come as a shock, but our emotions influence our behavior and our thinking, and our logical thinking as well. Right? Sometimes we make a decision. Most of the time we make a decision just based on our gut feeling, on our emotions. And then in the aftermath, we usually come up with rational reasons why we need to buy something or why we need to do something. But the decision has been made already, with our emotions in mind, with our emotions in control. And if you remember the analogy in the beginning, the logic is important. It's part of our lives, and it's an important and powerful tool. And it's there to solve problems, to analyze situations, to make decisions sometimes. But I'd say it's embedded in a larger framework of higher intelligence. So logical thinking is linear. That means we go step by step in our thinking. We do one thing after another, and we think things through in a process. But intuition is more holistic. It's big picture thinking. And that's why intuition can handle much more complex and high-level decisions much better than logical thinking can. And don't get me wrong, it's not about saying that logic is inferior to intuition. We need logic to make decisions and to solve problems, specific problems in our lives. But I think it's just important to point out the limits of logical thinking. And everybody who thinks that logical thinking is the best and the only true way of thinking is in for a rude awakening. And there's another distinction I want to make, because when I was contemplating intuition, I observed that there are two types of intuition. Of course, they work together, but I think it makes sense to look at them separately for a moment. There is what I call the micro-intuition. This is what makes you want to sit down in one particular coffee place. It makes you decide which song to pick on your guitar or in your Spotify playlist. It's like this magical pull towards something that you cannot really explain in this very moment. It decides these little moments throughout your day, and sometimes it builds momentum and has a bigger impact in your day. And then there's something I call macro intuition. It is like this big pull towards something larger than just a coffee shop. It's like you instantly gain clarity about the bigger picture of your life. It's like the fuel of visions and life-changing decisions. And as I said before, I think both of these intuitions work together, of course. If I open myself up to the spontaneous wisdom in everyday life, then I'm more able to honor deeper insights that I have for the whole of my life. Of course, that is super individual, and I know that this is just how I observe it. This is how it works for me. Okay, now it's getting really interesting because I want to talk about intuition and how intuitive people have actually a great impact on our society. Because intuitive people oftentimes motivate a paradigm shift. And I tell you an example about a paradigm shift in science. And Albert Einstein is one of the most famous examples for a paradigm shift and also for a deeply intuitive person. He often mentioned his imagination and his intuitive insights as key element for his discoveries. And I love this one thought experiment where he just imagined to be riding alongside a beam of light so he can observe the speed of light. And pure logic, based on the science of his time, couldn't really explain how light behave in such a situation. But he had this intuitive approach with this image. He was visualizing nature, time, and space, and questioning what he learned from other scientists so he could come to new conclusions and groundbreaking conclusions. And if Einstein would have said, well, I'm just going to take the scientific methods that we have today and use logical thinking all the time, he wouldn't have broken free from the constraints of his paradigm, of his time. And we see this pattern in other pioneers too. There are many scientists who stepped outside of the linear thinking and they imagined new possibilities, questioned assumptions, and embraced uncertainty. Many of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics, you will find many super intuitive people and people that are not just geeks and all about science who were interested in arts, philosophy, music, as we will discuss in a moment. Now, am I saying that we shouldn't be logical at all? Of course not. We still need logic. It's still important for our survival. It's still there for us to be used. You probably heard this quote from many different thinkers. It's something like, logic is a beautiful servant, but a terrible master. Or it can be put in another way, mind is a wonderful servant and a horrible master. There are many quotes out there. Einstein had said it, or other people said that. You don't know who really said what. I think many people said something around that throughout history. But it is really how I would see logic. It is powerful, it is useful, but don't be controlled by your logical thinking alone. So the takeaway is, intuition leads us to new places, to new discoveries, gives us new fresh insights that would otherwise remain hidden from us. And of course, we still draw from experience, from our knowledge, and use logical thinking. Let's get to the juicy part of the video and let's discuss how we actually become more intuitive. Okay, guys, I'm so excited to share this with you. So the first thing we need to do is to open ourselves up to intuition. And for that, it's good to get out of your head a little bit. Not just a little bit, actually, we should get out of our head a lot. So for that, we need to get moving. We need to loosen up. We need to relax. And there are many activities that I think you should try and see which one resonates with you. The activities that I know work for me are yoga, meditation, journaling, making music, learning an instrument, jamming, playing in jam sessions and being spontaneous and play spontaneously, interacting with people on different levels with different instruments. What also works is couple dance, also a wonderful way to learn intuition, to become more intuitive. Because why? It's because these activities involve your body to move, to become more conscious with your body. And I feel that it connects your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it. It connects everything. It just brings everything together. It integrates your thinking, your movement. And just by doing that alone, it will make you more creative in your thinking. It will give you clarity. And by doing that, you will move away. You will step away from rational thinking because you don't need it there. The more you will try to think about the next steps and trying to be logic about everything, you will start to overthink again, and it will not help you in moving freely and enjoying the music, enjoying the dance, and painting an image. It's just not helpful. It's not useful. So you will immediately start to deactivate this logical part of you. By doing this alone, you will notice that you will gain new insights just by doing these things because you have access to your intuition right away. This can happen in the shower, by the way, as well. So it doesn't have to be something fancy. Everything that helps you to relax will spark intuitive insights. So shower, go on long walks, whatever makes you happy. Surfing, sports of any kind. I imagine that these work pretty well as well. Einstein himself, he was a very passionate violinist. He loved to play music, and I think he said something like that if he wouldn't have become a physician, he would have become a musician. Maybe it was another physician said that, but some of these guys said it, and it's very likely. He loved to play the violin, and he also mentioned oftentimes that it helps him to relax and it helps him to think. And there are other groundbreaking scientists like Heisenberg and Max Planck who played the piano. And there's one of my favorite guys out there. It's Richard Feynman. He famously played the bongo, and he also loved experimenting with arts and philosophy. There's so much more to be said about Richard Feynman. Actually, I don't want to get distracted too much, but he's a really great and interesting guy, important quantum physicist. Read books about Richard Feynman. I would really encourage you. It's like such an interesting personality. And I think it's no coincidence that especially these quantum physics, I mean, they're like a rare breed. They were all in some way or another interested in philosophy, in Eastern mysticism, in arts, in music. And I think this was a tremendous influence for them, for their thinking and for their intuitive insights. But keep in mind, I'm just giving you examples here. There's no right or wrong. Just keep on experimenting, because find whatever helps you. If it's just showering, if it's just going on walks, it's totally fine. Just try to break out of your thinking, do new things, do stuff that makes you happy, stuff that makes you think less, and be open for whatever comes into your mind and body when you're doing that. So we have been talking about spontaneous insights, and most of us think that intuition is just something like that. It comes spontaneously. It just lights up like a light bulb in our mind, and we just have this idea. But there's a tool that I want to show you that will help you to intentionally use intuition. This is super helpful when you have to make a decision about something. Whenever you are thinking about a problem or a decision, try to visualize different scenarios in your mind or write them down and see how you feel about them. Again, this is intuitive. It's about feeling. It's not about analyzing each step. We want to be intuitive. We want to feel a situation. So visualize how the future could look like. How is future A looking for you? How is future B looking like? And how do they feel like? How does scenario A feel? How does scenario B feel like? Play with these different visions and see what resonates with you. Sometimes you cannot exactly pinpoint what it is, and that's exactly the point. We are processing complex data here. The intuitive mind works with images, with symbols, with feelings to process complex data. You can also work with questions to activate your imaginations. For example, how would it look like if I lived in location? How does it feel? What does my ideal day look like? How does it feel? If I had no fear, what would I do? How does it feel? And you can use questions like this for micro intuitions or for macro intuitions and for big decisions in your life. But if you're working with macro intuitions, I would recommend you to go a little bit deeper than just thinking about a scenario like that. Let's explore this now. I personally love writing for almost anything in my life because it is like thinking. Writing is thinking. It's a more precise form of thinking. I think it produces clarity and it puts these intuitive notions into a more solid experience. So when you are dealing with these macro intuitions, if you have an insight about a big life change, a potential change in your life, I want you to sit with this insight, contemplate it, write it down, spend a good time sitting with these big picture insights. Because intuition is non-linear. It's happening at so many places at once. And sometimes it's hard to actually look at it, to get a grasp of the insight. And it helps you to put it into a linear format like writing, to gather your thoughts. For me, it is bringing intuitive thinking into writing. It's such a powerful tool. And if you have never tried it, try it now. It is so amazing. But however you want to go about it, contemplate it. Contemplate it, contemplate it, contemplate it. Move the images in your mind, write the images down, work with symbols, work with feelings, because that's how you actually create clearer visions from just intuitive notions. And I think it's important to contemplate big life decisions because even though it's intuitive, sometimes our intuition is distracted by fear, anger, trauma, pain, ego, whatever you want to call it. There's many things that come in the way of our feeling, of our thinking. Basically, if you want to work with intuition, you want to be aware of which emotions, which feelings come with it. Again, there's a few questions that you can ask yourself if you're contemplating intuition. Do you feel like moving towards something larger than you? Does it feel good to imagine yourself in a new scenario? Does it encourage you to act from a place of love, compassion, and connection? Or do you feel like you need to defend this intuition? Or do you actually know that this will harm other people? When I have an intuition about something that affects my whole life, then I like to write down the whole scenario. Think about it like a vision statement, but just coming from your heart, not something that you might have learned in corporate situations. It's about writing what comes to you naturally. What do you see? How would you visualize this intuitive insight? For example, for a long time now, I have been thinking about building a community in Europe with close friends. And it really helps me to just write it down and to see how would this place look like, how would it feel like. Like in a novel, you would describe the location, the landscape, the characters, the background story, the music, the feeling, the values, whatever you want. And here's an example so you get what I mean. We are surrounded by nature and we build our homes made of wood. There are many communal spaces for yoga, meditation, and music where we can all come together and learn from each other. All of us have unique gifts and knowledge that they want to share through workshops and other shared activities. Everybody has their own place to live and is able to retreat anytime he or she wants. See, so without being too logical about this, you just sit down and you write from the heart, write from whatever comes up. And after a while, you will see there's a structure emerging. You will see how this place looks like. You will see what needs to be done. So you see from this intuitive vision, you will also be able to develop an action plan, to develop projects that will lead to this vision. Once you have decided if you want to work towards this vision, of course. So if you write this down, you will probably already feel this feels like the right thing. You will feel, wow, this is what I want to work towards to in my life. This is a life's tasks that I'm writing down here. And again, we are using our intuition to feel into our intuition. And there's another practice I love to use to develop my intuition, and that is to read and to learn. Dive into many different books, read many different perspectives from other people, learn concepts and models of the world, explore systems thinking. There are books on systems thinking as well, or a specific model that I really like is called spiral dynamics, which will help you to see the whole society. It will help you to see your own development and other people's development. And these models really help to give you a bigger picture in your thinking. And I know this might be counterintuitive because reading and learning might be, for many people, connected to the logical thinking, but I don't think that this is always true, especially when we are learning to broaden our horizons. And if we learn to understand other cultures, other people's stages of development, if you see how other people see, feel, and think about life, you will become more intuitive also with your cognitive abilities. You will make your mind more open. You will sharpen your mind in a positive way. So really read books. Don't just read books, of course. Use it as a tool alongside other methods like we discussed today. But I would really recommend you to dive into systems thinking or learn about ecosystems and spiral dynamics, psychology, development theory. There's plenty of things to learn here. But of course, be careful. Don't just consume other people's knowledge and points of views. You really need to go out there, observe, do experiments, come to your own conclusions, use your own intuitions, trust your gut, develop your own insights, right? And expand your own perspectives. Before we end this video, let's discuss why you would struggle with intuitive thinking. You have one out of two problems. And the first one is you are not open for intuition. And the second problem is you are open, but you don't like to take action. If you want to solve the first problem and become more open, then experiment with all these activities that we talked about, like yoga, meditation, journaling, sports, painting, whatever helps you to break out of your logical thinking pattern. Now, if you are struggling with the second one, you have some insights, but your life doesn't seem to change, then it is usually because you don't want to take actions or you think you cannot take actions. So to solve that, you need two things. The first thing is clarity. Sometimes it feels like you have this idea, but you're not clear about where this is going. You don't know how it looks like. For that, again, write down anything that you can think of, anything that you can see in front of your eyes. Write down a vision, write down scenarios. Be clear about what this intuition entails. You need to become clear about how this intuition would unfold in your life. And if you have this scenario written down, it's time for you to break it down into projects, concrete actions that will lead you closer towards that vision. If you already feel like a pull towards this thing, but you're still not sure, just do this exercise and still write down the tasks, write down the projects that you would need in order to get closer to that vision of yours. And the second thing you will need is bravery. Yes, you need to be brave in order to follow that, because oftentimes we're just too afraid. Oftentimes we're just too comfortable. We don't want to leave the life that we are leading. And even though we know we need to leave our job, we need to leave the country, we need to build our own business, we don't want to. And we will run away from a life-changing and probably a better way of living just because we feel too comfortable. And for that, you need to be brave. I think clarity helps to make it a bit more real, to make it a bit more tangible what you are facing. And then you can just pick like the easiest projects that bring you a little bit closer to this vision. And once you have the bravery, be ready to work for a couple of years towards this vision, because even though this intuition is spontaneous and just can pop up in your mind, it doesn't mean that it is not profound. It can take you years until you are in this scenario that you have envisioned. Take my community, for example. This will take 5 to 10 years until I'm anywhere close to what I'm seeing there. But I'm ready to just move towards that goal slowly and just finish one goal after another until I am there. I just want to address one last objection that you might have when it comes to intuitive insights. Intuition can be distorted by biases, by fear and anger, as we already touched upon. And I will make a full video about that in the future. That's why it's important to have activities like meditation and other forms of inner work, emotional work, that will help you to regulate your emotional state, that will help you to purify yourself in a way, to be clear-minded, clear-headed, and to let go of trauma and other heavy emotions that you might carry with you. For this, I made a video about shadow work. You should try that out if you wanna start with some inner work in a very simple way, very effective. It's a very powerful, effective tool that everybody can do anytime. So definitely check this out. But I will also make another video about intuition in the future. So if you enjoyed that stuff, thank you so much for being there. I hope I see you in the future and see you soon in the next video.